Hiya, peeps. How's it going? I'm wearing red lipstick for like the first time in years. I've been experimenting with putting lipstick on because I never, I don't do any of that stuff. Anyway, just trying to feel good about, being inside all the time, so it helps to do those types of things. Anyway, can you guys hear me? Because sometimes my headphones don't work and I just want to make sure. Just do like a thumbs up or a yes or something so I know that you guys can hear me. Please. Give me some kind of a note. Okay. Chapter 27. You guys, we are so close to being done with this book. Hardwiring Humans. Sound kind of like we're about what we're embarking upon right now, potentially, perhaps. Intelligence agencies, in league with the scientific establishment, are currently in a rush to create the ultimate in control, where a person's entire perception of reality is replaced by another of the controller's choosing. This is written in 1998. Remember that. The means to accomplish this is provided by access and control of the human mind by computer. The first step in access and control began with mapping the brain. One early experiment was funded by the CIA in 1975 to the tune of $100,000 per year. According to an article in the San Diego Union titled CIA Funds Project at Hospital Here, Children's Hospital and Health Center is conducting experiments under a CIA grant to develop what some say could be a sophisticated lie detector system that probes the human brain electronically. Experiments on human volunteers, most of them members of the hospital staff, administrators, and friends, have been conducted for 2 years. The agency at first asked the hospital not to discuss the project. However, the hospital's medical director and hospital officials later decided it disliked the idea of secrecy and told the CIA they wanted to be able to talk freely about the work. Experiments are being conducted in the health center's Speech, Hearing, and Neuromemory Center by its research director, Dr. Albert Lawrence. They involve what are called visual evoked responses, recorded electronically from brainwaves and analyzed by computers. Subjects respond to pictures of faces flashed on screens. Some are familiar, some are unfamiliar. Familiar faces evoke a different brainwave pattern than unfamiliar faces. And the computer can tell the difference even if the subject says nothing. According to the director of the project, accuracy of identification by computer had reached as high as 80%. He also mentioned that the results of the experiments would be combined with clinical trials at the Children's Hospital. Apparently, San Diego wasn't the only place where brain mapping studies were being done on children. Advanced techniques were patented in 1983 by the Children's Medical Center of Boston for brain electrical activity mapping, BEAM, which in turn would be displayed on detailed present-time videos, BEAM, which in turn would be displayed on detailed present-time video to topographic maps that could be monitored by technicians. In a story headed, "See You Tomorrow," the Washington Post in 1984 reported on a convention of the World Future Society, the World Future Society. I bet you anything that was headed up and spearheaded by our lovely, not so lovely Nazi George Soros. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. The author said, perhaps the most exciting stuff came from engineer James B. Beale, who simply told about what already exists that might lead us to mainlining information from one brain to another. You can't make this shit up, dude. He spoke of devices that can be placed in the eyeball to aid sight or behind the ear to stimulate hearing. Pacemakers that work from outside the heart, gadgets that can induce all sorts of reaction from vomiting to laughter. The body is, after all, electrochemical and is affected by the low-frequency fields emanating from TV sets. For instance, hyperactive children seem to be made worse by overexposure to TV sets. The fantasy in the film Brainstorm, in which a person's mental pictures are literally transferred onto tape to be beamed into someone else's head, will be a reality soon, Beale said. And this was in 1984. Sorry, 1983. No, 1984, sorry. 1984. This type of research has been on the front burner for intelligence agencies in both the West and East, judging by information released about a mind control device developed by Russians Igor Smirnov and Sergei Kovatsevets at the ominously titled Department of Psychocorrection at the Moscow Medical Academy. Non-lethal weapons, including mind control researchers Janet and Chris Morris, watched a demonstration in 1991 of a device that was able to analyze the contents of a person's mind, building up a picture of the mind that could be used for subliminal and other forms of corrective intervention. The Smirnov-Kovatsevets device was later demonstrated by the Morrises to journalist David Scullman at CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, with Scuckman, videotaping the demonstration. He describes the equipment as being hardly impressive, simply a few pieces of computer equipment, but the results of the equipment were impressive. Chris Morris acted as a guinea pig, with several electrodes taped to his head. When the equipment was activated, a computer screen came to life and displayed a succession of words. Scuckman says each letter was at least 6 letters long. A few made sense, but most had the curious characteristic of nearly resembling a recognizable word, but not quite doing so. Deembut, Jovotri, Christoph, Ficknell, Borati, Banstar. Morris stared at the screen, and the light from the screen flashed across his face, his eyes transfixed by the words. A slight furrow appeared on his brow as he struggled to interpret them in the split second before they vanished. Yet it turned out that there was another hidden layer of probing taking place as well. When we replayed our video tape several days later, we discovered that sandwiched between the visible words were other words caught on a single frame, appearing for as little as 1/60th of a second. These had a more sinister tone: armed, attack, defense, weapon. According to the inventors, the words were simply designed to focus the mind and to distract the activity of the conscious mind while the machine delved into the unconscious reactions of the subject. After 20 minutes, the Russians downloaded a 3-dimensional graph that showed the relationship of 10 different factors in Morris's life, including anxiety, health, family, father, and job. Morris found the analysis accurate, so much so that he asked it to be kept confidential. Smirnov and Kovacevic remarked that, using the results of the analysis, they could choose the optimal strategy for treatment. Smirnov and Kovacevic also talk about analyzing ethnic groups or even countries for problems and vulnerabilities, and then specifically targeting communications with subliminals to handle those problems or perhaps to exacerbate them. According to researcher Skuckman, it is believed in Western intelligence circles that such a technique was applied to certain key Soviet units in Afghanistan. The open scientific literature certainly reveals a highly active research program in this area, and with morale low among the occupying troops, a device for encouraging a robust performance would have proved useful. One former Soviet paratrooper sergeant confirmed as much to me in an interview in Minsk in February 1992. He said that before particularly unpleasant missions, such as a search and destroy operation, he and his colleagues were sometimes ordered into a dark room to watch swirling colored shapes projected onto a screen and to listen to strange noises. In 1990, a device called a biomagnetic analytical system was patented, consisting of a helmet whose purpose is to minutely map magnetic fields in the brain or any other part of the body through fiber optics. According to the patent, the output signals are processed to provide a display or recording exhibiting the pattern or map of magnetic fields resulting from emanations in the brain or other portion of the body. A current innovation in the interface between human beings and computers is the creation of a silicone computer chip that stimulates an individual nerve cell without damaging it, with the capability of selectively triggering neuronal response. Designed by Drs. Peter Fromhertz and Alfred Stett at the Max Planck Institute of Biochemistry in Munich, the silicone chip triggers neuron impulses and also receives them using neuron transistors that are able to translate those impulses. Theoretically, these computer chips would have the capability of broadcasting whole complexes of perceptions and thought into the unwitting brain of the hardwired subject, of dumping whole simulations of reality into their minds. Think about the implications of this, you guys. Oh my God. In January of 1991, Dr. Stuart Hameroff of the University of Arizona indicated the possibility that human brain function could be contained in modules outside of the human body. Let's read that again, shall we? Indicated the possibility that human brain function could be contained in modules outside the human body. Hameroff noted that he believed that human consciousness might be dependent upon computer-like cytoskeletal polymers within living cells, and that an idea expressed relevant to life beyond 2000 was that the brain cytoskeletal proteins could be prepared in an artificial environment which may be capable of containing cognitive function. A Frankensteinian notion indeed. Well, folks, I think we're there. Listings of government spending for 1992 show that the Office of Naval Research was funded for research along similar lines that involved the melding of computers and human minds. They were involved in the process of creation of artificial neural nets. And the emulation of human neurology within electronic information processing systems, as well as multimodal integration. A final cluster of research includes theoretical and experimental studies of multimodal perceptual integration and expression in what appears to be automatic control behavior. The aim of this program is to understand perceptual integration and control processes at a level that permits design guidance for human-computer interfaces and supervisory control systems. Also researched was neuroplasticity in behavior modification. Behind the gobbledygook of jargon is the potential for completely shaping the perceptions of human beings, beyond the kind of shaping that is now done by propaganda and advertising and other less subtle means. Another startling innovation is the creation of what is called an intelligence amplifier. In a paper titled Symbiotic Technology in Education, presented in 1983 at the American Educational Research Association annual meeting, Glenn F. Cartwright of the Department of Educational Psychology and Counseling at McGill University reported that research findings indicate that major breakthroughs in education will have to occur through direct cortical intervention, using either chemical or electronic means. Cartwright further stated, "In the future, it will be possible to build more sophisticated intelligence amplifiers that will be internal extensions of our brains." These ethnotronic devices will be significantly more powerful than present-day computers and may even be wired directly to the human brain for both input and output. They will amplify and strengthen all the intellectual abilities we now take for granted as comprising intelligent human activity. We may call such devices symbionic minds, symbiotic plus bionic. Because of the close interdependent relationships that will almost certainly exist between them and our own brains, and because they may make us, to some degree, bionic. Intelligence amplification aside, my concern is that these sorts of devices will be used to delete mind/brain functions that do not conform to the will of the mind control masters. In 1999, Reuters news service spoke of a device that reads brainwaves through the skull has enabled paralyzed people to write sentences on a computer screen. 2 patients have managed to write messages on a computer screen via electrodes planted in the brain by researchers at Emory University in Atlanta. Now, researchers in Germany and the United States have placed small electrodes on top of patients' heads to record signals from the brain. Once patients learn to control the computer cursor in this way, they can begin to write messages. Neuroscientists have implanted a device in the motor neocortex of 2 people that has allowed them to operate a computer display by thinking about it. Dr. Philip R. Kennedy at Georgia Institute of Technology and Emory University developed an implant that can be used to detect activity of neurons and convey these signals to computers for further processing and control operations. The small recording sensor is enclosed in a glass envelope and coated with nerve growth factors. The small recording sensor is enclosed in a glass envelope and coated with nerve growth factors that allow neurons in the region of the implant to establish functional connections with the sensor. Surgeries on 2 patients were performed by Dr. Roy Baquet from Emory. The electrodes were implanted in the motor cortex near the arm fascial region. Both patients were paralyzed and unable to move their limbs or speak. The first patient, who had the implant for 2.5 months before dying from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, learned to control the signals in an on-off manner for 7 days. The second patient, who suffered brainstem stroke after a heart attack, has had the implant for 6 months. By the 90s, electronic control of human beings was fairly openly mentioned in the literature of the military, as for instance, in the U.S. Army War College of The Revolution in Military Affairs and Conflict Short of War by Seven Metz and James Kievet, published in 1994. One of the revelations of this book is that behavior modification is a key component of peace enforcement. These people are so fucking nuts. And that such modification will be directed against the American people. This will take place, the authors state, through directed energy systems, whose primary advantage is deniability. Setting their report 16 years in the future, 1994, so this was going to be 2010, right? Metz and Kievet are straightforward about the unlimited possibilities inherent in perception molding through the use of psychotechnologies. Anyone who objects to this kind of mind warping will be identified using comprehensive interagency integrated databases, then categorized into computerized personality simulations, which will be used to develop, tailor, and focus psychological campaigns for each. I'm just going to keep going. The book, New World Vistas, was published in 1996 by the USA, U.S. Air Force Scientific Advisory Board. In this report, under the heading Biological Process Control, we note that prior to the mid-21st century, there will be a virtual explosion of knowledge in the field of neuroscience. We will have achieved a clear understanding of how the human brain works, how it really controls the various functions of the body, and how it can be manipulated both positively and negatively. One can envision the development of electromagnetic energy sources, the output of which can be pulsed, shaped, and focused, that can couple with the human body in a fashion that will allow one to prevent voluntary muscular movements, control emotions and thus actions, produce sleep, transmit suggestions, interfere with both short-term and long-term memory, produce an experience set, and delete an experience set. It would also appear possible to create high-fidelity speech in the human body, raising the possibility of covert suggestion and psychological direction. When a high-power microwave pulse in the gigahertz range strikes the human body, a very small temperature perturbation occurs. This is associated with a sudden expansion of the slightly heated tissue. This expansion is fast enough to produce an acoustic wave. If a pulse stream is used, it should be possible to create an internal acoustic field in the 5 to 15 kilohertz range. Kilohertz, which is audible. Anybody hear of tinnitus? Thus, it may be possible to talk to selected adversaries in a fashion that would be most disturbing to them. Other capabilities mentioned in New World Vistas are akin to the creation and broadcasting of artificial realities. The concept of imprinting an experience set is highly speculative, but nonetheless highly exciting. Modern electromagnetic scattering theory raises the prospect that ultra-short pulse scattering through the human brain can result in reflected signals that can be used to construct a reliable estimate of the degree of central nervous system arousal. The concept behind this remote EEG is to scatter off of action potentials or ensembles of action potentials in major central nervous system tracts. Assuming we will understand how our skills are imprinted and recalled, it might be possible to take this concept one step further and duplicate the experience set in another individual. Another military paper titled Information Operations, a new warfighting capability, published in 1996, is a study designed to comply with a directive from the Chief of Staff of the Air Force to examine the concepts, capabilities, and technologies the United States will require to remain the dominant air and space force in the future. The paper speaks of the primary necessity for the U.S. for continued success as a superpower to be information dominance. Part of this dominance will be the development of a space satellite-linked Information Integration Center, or IIC, which will act as a central processing and control center. The IIC will monitor people who have been implanted with a microscopic brain chip. The chip performs two functions. First, it links the individual to the IIC. Again, Information Integration Center, creating a seamless interface between the user and the information resources, in-time collection data, and archival databases. In essence, the chip relays the processed information from the IIC to the user. Second, the chip creates a computer-generated mental visualization based upon the user's request. One of the techniques to achieve this is a combination of brain processes and visual imaging that has been developed in the laboratory. The California Institute of Technology has developed an energy-efficient computer chip which emulates the analog thinking of the human brain. When this capability is fully mature, this chip could provide the baseline for a brain implant hooked to all the sensory segments of the brain, not just the eye. The paper notes certain concerns. It states, implanting things in people raises ethical and public relations issues. While these concerns may be founded on today's thinking, in 2025, they may not be as alarming. We already are evolving towards technology implanting. For example, the military currently requires its members to receive mandatory injections of biological organisms, i.e., the flu shot. In the civilized world, people receive mechanical hearts and other organs. So society has come to accept most of these implants as a fact of life. By 2025, it is possible medical technology will have nerve chips that allow amputees to control artificial limbs, or eye chips that allow the blind to see. The civilian populace will likely accept an implanted microscopic chip that allows military members to defend vital national interests. Let me reread that for you, shall I? By 2025, it is possible medical technology will have nerve chips that allow amputees to control artificial limbs, or eye chips that allow the blind to see. The civilian populace will likely accept an implanted microscopic chip that allows military members to defend vital national interests. In 1982, Dorothy Burdick wrote a book about her ordeal as an experimental subject of U.S. intelligence agencies. Although this information has not been completely verified, additional information that will be presented in this book leads one to believe that Burdick was not deluded. She wrote, since 1973, the Advanced Research Project Agency of the Defense Department has utilized the combined efforts of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, New York University, the University of California at Los Angeles, and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Ames Research Center at Moffett Field in California to read minds at a distance by deciphering the brain's magnetic waves. The Pentagon denied the project was secret, although a reporter was ousted from a meeting on the subject by someone identified as a member of the CIA. The MEG magnetoencephalogram is many times more sensitive than the EEG, the electroencephalogram. MEG was originally reported in 1968. A computer search of the current literature reveals little published on MEG because it is undoubtedly classified in ARPA's, ARPA, Advanced Research Projects Agency, computer network. Another aspect of the technology, Burdick wrote, was FOCUS, Flexible Optical Control Unit Simulator. FOCUS projects hallucinatory images directly on the retina of the eye. When the images are projected, the subjects show the same body responses that they would by taking a drug. The subjects cannot tell the machine images from reality. FOCUS was developed at UCLA's Neuropsychiatric Institute by Ron Siegel, an experimental psychologist who eventually hopes to control retrieval of imagery information at will, including that of daydreams, sleep, and hallucinations. Although Burdick does not mention it, Siegel was a writing partner with CIA mind control expert Louis Jolyon West, Dr. Jolly. Evaluating the above information, it is obvious that with the state of the art in computers, electronics, implants, and other forms of manipulation, that a threshold can be crossed or has been crossed. We have reached a point where the mind masters can now or very soon will be able to completely control our perception of reality. They will be able to own our reality completely, so much so that we will not know that our thinking, our perceptions are not our own, but are dictated to us from an exterior source. As reported in the New York Times in 1998, British Telecommunications is currently at work on a device that they dub the Soul Catcher. A computer chip implanted in the optic nerve behind the eye that, in conjunction with genetic programming, will monitor and record the entirety of a person's thinking, what they see, what they feel. This information, according to Dr. Chris Winter of British Telecommunications, will be stored in a central computer. Information will also be fed to the person from an exterior, computerized source for extrasensory experience. Among the other capabilities foreseen for Soul Catcher is the implanting of one person's chip into a newborn baby. Thus transplanting the entire experience of one person into another. Well, there you have it, folks. We're in it. This has already been happening. This book was written in 1998. 22 years ago. And there are people being controlled by this. Not to mention the incessant occupation by interdimensional beings of physical bodies and cloning and all the other levels, right, that go along with this type of fuckery. Yeah, wow, is right, Anne Marie. Exactly. This has been going on a long time. And I, for one, have been personally involved in some of these experimentations. I have numerous accounts in my life where it doesn't happen to me anymore, thank God. So grateful. And if they try to do it with me, they can't get away with it anymore because I'm so keen on them that I know what's going on. And I've dissolved most of the implants or had them removed. So I'm in a very special spot in that regard, that I have been able to circumvent the targeting, and it no longer is as prevalent in my life. But that wasn't the case until a couple of years ago, and I'm 51. So it's only been a couple of years, actually, that I've been able to manage the situation for myself. And I've also developed a system of healing that helps dismantle that from our consciousness and from the levels of mind control that we have all been under. I will say that in the last couple of years, I've noticed that there was a veil that I helped lift that then started to expose all the entities and the energies that have been operating in secret, or, they tried to keep putting a veil back down over us so that we would just go along with it. But now that veil has been lifted and the spells have been broken and they can't hide anymore. And so now they're just coming out and they don't even care anymore. They're just showing us who they are. Which in effect is really good. Even if they are laughing in our faces, they're not going to survive this, because now everybody knows. And it's surprising actually how many people don't know what's really going on in terms of like human trafficking and the level of sacrifice that happens literally on a daily basis with children, and the torturing and murdering and eating and drinking of the blood of children that's been going on. It has just exploded in the last few years, right? And they knew that this was coming. They all knew when Trump got elected that there was going to be a major shift. And, I left the country because I just couldn't, I just wasn't willing to live in a country where either one of those people would have been in power. At the time, that's how I felt. I was very apolitical and I wasn't interested in politics, but I wasn't willing to not have my freedom either. So I left the country and I became an expat. And now I'm back. So if that tells you anything, I chose to come back when my son asked me to come back. And in the last few years that I've been back, I have discovered so many levels of further fuckery that's happening with the entire population. And I've been working directly and diligently on, counteracting and circumventing all the fuckery. I keep saying the word fuckery because my son uses the word fuck a lot. So it comes up in conversation. For me, I think the important thing to remember is that there isn't a point yet where I have felt safe. Like physically, I feel safe. Energetically, I feel safe. All the levels I actually feel safe. But in terms of sharing my story, I still don't feel 100% safe to speak my truth. And the way that I want to go about it is very comprehensive so as not to be discredited or, whatever that looks like, there's no reason for me to attract that kind of attention into my life. And so I've been very cautious and very careful about the way that I go about telling my story. Because I have experienced everything in this book. Like, seriously, every single chapter that I have read out of the 29 chapters, I'm on chapter 27. Literally, every single chapter, I have experienced something. I have had the direct experience of this in my person. Okay? So this is no joke. And this stuff sounds really out there, even from 22 years ago. That is how much of a wool over our eyes we have had pulled. They don't want us to know anything. And the gig is up. That's no longer the case. Now everybody's finding out. And those that have been convinced that the controller's way is the best way, they're going to have a seriously rude awakening. Like, holy shit, is it going to be rude? So for those of us that have been going through this already for quite some time, we're prepared mentally for what's coming. We've already seen a lot of what is happening behind the scenes, and we are praying to that end, and we are doing everything we can to support that situation energetically, to save the children, to save our soldiers, to save our human beings from the demise of our entire population of the earth. And when you have this inside information, it makes it a lot easier to live every single day and not lose complete hope. Because there's something coming that's even more magnificent than you can ever possibly imagine. What we are experiencing right now is the end of evil. So, of course, when that happens, it's like it makes it very difficult to see outside of that, because they are fighting to the death to keep their way of life going, to keep their control and their power that they have stolen from us. Okay? That's not happening anymore. Nope. That's not happening anymore. What is happening is we have a global financial reset happening. The currencies of the world are revaluing. And what that means is there's the Global Economic and Securities and Reformation Act that is going into effect right now. And the old SWIFT system, which is the old system that all the money operated through, all the currencies operated through the SWIFT system, which was funneling all the money up to the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. Okay? That is no longer the case. What does that mean? That means that all debt is going to be forgiven. We will no longer have income tax. We will have one tax only, between 14 and 17%, which will be taxing on new items only. We have managed to restore our republic. We still have the municipalities of the states that we have to deal with because they're under corporate governance, which is a problem. However, and that's how these democratic rulers, if you will, are getting away with some of the things that they're getting away with because of the corporate governance. But we have to understand that that's all changing, and it's going to take all of us, the people, to stand up for those rights that we have as stockholders in the governance corporate governance of our states to be able to say enough is enough and we will no longer tolerate your bad behavior. We are asking you to step down. We are telling you you're stepping down. We're taking you out of office. For real. Like, that's what it's going to take to get some of these people out of office and put people in there that are actually for the people, that are the right, they're in integrity and in alignment with human beings and the well-being of human beings. Because what we're seeing right now is absolute absurdity and insanity. Like, it's fucking lunacy, dude. But it's these people that are actually either under mind control or in full agreement with what they're doing, and their principles are based on communistic principles and Marxism, but also because they are themselves convicted pedophiles. So you got to think about that factor, because that factor is what puts everything else into perspective. The reason we are seeing this absolute breakdown is because this group of people that have been operating in front of our faces in broad daylight, stealing children, raping children, stealing children out of their homes, okay? These people are going down. They are actually going down. They're being arrested. And that includes some of the people that are running for the presidency of the United States. And so we fortunately have a group of people that are handling that whole situation, right? If we didn't have a legion of people, right? The light system. If we didn't have that supporting the end of evil, this is good versus evil. This is not an election. This is not COVID. This is the global financial reset of the planet, mixed with all the ways that the dark forces and the evil cabal members don't want you to find out the truth, and they're going to fight to the end, and they don't care who gets hurt. And they've had all of us under mind control and asleep for a very long time. And some of us have been awake through it all. You know? So fortunately for me, I feel like I'm one of those people that's been awake through it all because I'm a survivor, right? So I've had the privilege, if you will, of having been firsthand experiencer of this and understanding how it operates and being able to recognize it. And so it's really important to understand that there's a lot of people that are survivors of human trafficking, and they just haven't talked. They haven't spoken up yet. They haven't even begun to let their stories be known. And when they do, you're going to see the magnitude at which this has been operating. And right now, we've got to save all the children that are being harmed. There are like 4 to 5 generations of children underground, birthing children, deformed, that have been raped and tortured and enslaved in underground tunnels that are never seen the sun. They probably don't even know how to speak. Most of them probably don't. This is very severe. But the only way out of this is through. Full transparency and truth and a witnessing of the evil is the only way that we can redirect this planet out of it. And it is going to take some bravery on our parts. And I am so grateful and commend those that are being brave right now and going into those underground tunnels and blowing them up after they've rescued all the children. The underground bases, the underground cities, there's tons of them. It's been going on for years through rogue agencies that I just mentioned. It's beyond what we can even fathom. And if I hadn't been in those underground bases myself, I couldn't attest to that, but I already know because I've already experienced it. I know it's real. So for me, it's almost a relief that this is happening, because finally, after 51 years in this reality, there's some talk of it, let alone something being done about it. It's huge. And there's a lot of me. There's a lot of people just like me. A lot. Millions. Millions of people just like me. I'm not alone. Thank God I know that. For real. Because if I didn't know that, it would be really, really tough. Especially right now. Pray for the children every day. Include them in your prayers for humanity. Pray for the children. For real. Just please. We invoke divine will in every single moment, that the children may be saved and brought, and those that have harmed them be brought to justice. And so it is. I love you for the highest good of all. Whatever that looks like, whatever's in the highest good. That's what's important here. I love you guys.